Hi everyone, my name is Austin, and well, summer is once again upon us. So you know what that means. It's time for me to do the semi-seminal summer event, where I cover 3 different films in the summertime, one in June, one in July, and one in August, to basically celebrate the summer of whatever we got going on. It's summertime, ladies and gentlemen. That means it's time for me to cover a certain set of films that are somewhat connected with each other. Last year I paid tribute to Robin Williams, and well, this year it may not be a tribute, but it is certainly a series of films that I kind of have been interested in doing, mostly because I kind of made a suggestion to myself of doing the first film back around the summer of Jim, if you remember that. And so, with this in mind, it's time to jack in, jack out.
Jacking off this dick!
And so, with this, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to do a summer event, which is in this lovely, lovely box set here. Ooh la la, so shiny, so glossy, so colorful. Well, what is it? Well, in case you couldn't tell, we're doing the first 3 Matrix movies, and of course, we're starting with The Matrix, seen here with this lovely, lovely art case right here. Yeah, take a look at that. Ain't it gorgeous? So yeah, all summer long we're covering the first 3 Matrix movies, so grab your sunglasses and your long trench coats. It's time to jack in. The plot of The Matrix, in case you are unaware, goes something like this. In an unnamed city in what appears to be the year 1999, a computer programmer named Thomas Anderson, known in hacking circles as Neo, is trying to uncover the mystery of the Matrix, which soon leads him to a woman named Trinity, who claims that the enigmatic Morpheus has the answers.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Neo is then pursued by Agent Smith, his agents, and the police, and following an attempt to track him, Neo soon meets Morpheus, who offers him this ultimatum.
You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
What about the green pill?
I taste like boogers.
Red pill it is.
Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
After taking that red candy-like pill, so that he may be able to uncover and see how deep the rabbit hole goes, that's when the truth comes out. The year is not 1999, but 2199. As during the 21st century, humanity lost a war to artificially intelligent creations, and it has left Earth in a state of ruin, not unlike Mad Max, with humans attempting to eliminate the machine's access to solar power by blackening the sky, only for them to create farms of artificial humans to possess their bioelectric energy. The Matrix is a simulated reality based on humanity during its peak, which is manufactured to put humans into a state of obedience and render them unaware of the reality of their situation. Meanwhile, any humans free of the control of the machines live in an underground refuge known as Zion, living off of scarce resources in a harsh environment, with Morpheus and his team of rebels hacking into the Matrix to liberate and recruit others to the cause, bending the rules of the simulation to make them into superhumans with extraordinary abilities. But even so are outmatched by the agents who protect the Matrix. And if you die in the simulation, you die in real life, not unlike A Nightmare on Elm Street. With Neo in particular, Morpheus freed him because he believes he's the One, a prophesized figure who is believed to be able to dismantle the Matrix and free humanity from its state of sedation and mind control. What follows are scenes of stylish action, themes of philosophy, and many other classic moments that have had audiences like this since. Yeah, that's the plot. Very intriguing and obviously having certain parallels to the likes of Alice in Wonderland and such, while having its own flair. It's pretty awesome, even if it's kind of hard to explain without telling the whole first act. But trust me, it's worth it. Now let's discuss the production of this masterpiece. The Matrix's conception dates back to 1994, when the Wachowskis presented their script for Assassins to Warner Brothers, which I should mention was heavily rewritten by Brian Hedlund of LA Confidential during production, for which Lorenzo de Bonaventura, then president of Warner Brothers and future producer for all those G.I. Joe and Transformers films, read the Assassin's script and opted to purchase the rights for it and 2 other films, those being Bound and The Matrix, in a contract. Bound would become the first film directed by the Wachowskis, and while Gramercy Pictures distributed rather than Warner Brothers, it became a critical success, and with this momentum, they were soon able to convince executives to let them direct The Matrix. Keanu Reeves once said that the Matrix avatar in an early draft of the script would have been a completely different sex than what would have been found in Zion. However, the studio wasn't ready for that, so this was dropped. So, in theory, Neo would be Keanu Reeves in The Matrix, while Patricia Arquette would be Neo's real form, while Morpheus would have been Pam Grier in real life, Trinity could have been Kim's cousin Larry, and Cypher would resemble Lucagen. I actually better be careful with that reference. Ace has been telling me to cut back on those references over something that he feels rather embarrassed about, and right now he's not in a talking mood to discuss this matter. By the way, I wrote this myself. Ace is simply supervising the editing. Anyway, in 1996, in what's become a very well-known story, Will Smith was originally offered the role of Neo by the Wachowskis, with the idea to cast him as the character, while Val Kilmer, who was also offered to play Neo, was to portray Morpheus. Smith couldn't wrap his head around the idea of the film, as it involves one of the most ambitious effects of the film, that being bullet time, and has even said that he never felt mature enough for the role and would have screwed it up if he accepted it, and turned it down to do something very regretful, Wild Wild West. A film so bad that any criticisms toward the Matrix sequels seem like nothing in comparison. While we're on the topic of casting, Neo was offered to Nicolas Cage, but said no because of family obligations. Leonardo DiCaprio initially said yes, but later dropped out due to not wanting to do another effects-heavy film following Titanic. Johnny Depp was touted by the Wachowskis as being their first choice when Reeves was cast by the studio. Tom Cruise was offered the role. Brad Pitt was sought by Warner Brothers for the role. Ewan McGregor was said to have been sent the script, but turned it down to become Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And there was even talk of making Neo female by having Sandra Bullock play the character, but she gave a firm no to that. Meanwhile, for Trinity, Janet Jackson was approached for the role, but her schedule kept her from saying yes. Sandra Bullock was also offered this role, but turned it down as well, and Rosie Perez, Salma Hayek, and Jada Pinkett Smith who would later play Niobe in the sequels, auditioned for the role. Jean Reno was offered to play Agent Smith, but refused to move down to Australia to play the part, and Madonna was offered a role, possibly Trinity, but declined, ultimately regretting this decision. Pretty soon, producer Joel Silver, who's had involvement in the Lethal Weapon films, the first two Predator and Die Hard films, Commando, Weird Science, 48 Hours, Roadhouse, The Last Boy Scout, Demolition Man, V for Vendetta, and the Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes films, became involved with the project, although even with him and De Bonaventura being champions of the project to help influence the company, this was still a huge investment for Warner Brothers, who had to pour in $60 million to create an actual motion picture called The Matrix with prominent actors and very meticulous special effects. Because of this, with the Wachowskis hired underground comic book artist Jeff Darrow, known for his work on Shaolin Cowboy, Hard Boiled, and The Big Guy and Rusty the Robot Boy, and Steve Scrossi, who had involvement with Clive Barker's superhero comic Ecto Kid, to draw a 600-page shot-by-shot storyboard for the whole movie, eventually getting the studio's approval, where it was decided to film it in Australia to really make the most of its budget. The film would soon become a co-production between Warner Brothers and Village Roadshow Pictures, a company that has currently filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy after ambitious studio expansion, staff layoffs, and the simultaneous release of The Matrix Resurrections, which led to a feud with Warner Brothers. And according to the DVD commentary with editor Zach Strandberg, whose credits include The Chosen, Police Academy, Lord of War, and Speed Racer, the production team sent out an edit of the film's first opening moments, which, as you can tell, featured Trinity's encounter with the police and agents, to Warner Brothers executives, and pretty much this was how they felt.
I like it!
And so with that, we move to the pre-production stage. To prepare for what was coming ahead, the cast was required to ensure an understanding of the Matrix and to explain it while not looking baffled, with French philosopher Jean Baudrillard's Simulacra and Simulation being required reading for most of the principal cast and crew. In early 1997, the Wachowskis made Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss read Simulacra and Simulation, Kevin Kelly's Out of Control, The New Biology of Machines, Social Systems, and the Economic World, and Dylan Evans' ideas on evolutionary psychology long before they were ever allowed to read the script, with Reeves being able to explain all of the philosophical nuances involved with the Matrix, while Moss found the process to be difficult, not unlike trying to tell the difference between homophones and homonyms. Meanwhile, the Wachowskis had long been admirers of Hong Kong action cinema, and opted to hire Chinese martial arts choreographer and film director Yuen Wu-ping, the director of Snake and the Eagle's Shadow, Drunken Master, Dance of the Drunken Mantis, The Magnificent Butcher, Drunken Tai Chi, Iron Monkey, and Master Z, The Ip Man Legacy, and did choreography for Once Upon a Time in China 2, Fist of Legend, Black Mask, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, The Kill Bill Duology, Kung Fu Hustle, Unleashed, Fearless, and both Ip Man 3 and Ip Man 4, the finale, to put fight scenes together. To prep for the wire fu that was to unfold, the actors trained very hard for several months, with the Wachowskis scheduling 4 months worth of training, commencing in October 1997, with Yoon initially being optimistic before becoming worrisome when he saw that the actors were about as fit as a Snorlax in a marathon race with the Flash. Yoon let their body style develop and then worked on each actor's strength, building off of Keanu Reeves' diligence, Lawrence Fishburne's resilience, Hugo Weaving's precision, and Moss's dignity, with Yoon even designing the latter's moves to suit her embodied deftness and lightness. Prior to reproduction, Reeves had undergone a 2-level fusion of his cervical spine due to a spinal cord compression from a herniated disc, so much so he was falling over during his morning showers and was still recovering during the pre-production. Reeves insisted on training, however, and Yoon allowed him to practice punches and less taxing moves, with the actor training hard and even requesting training even on his days off. But even so, the surgery meant that Reeves couldn't do very much kicking for 2 out of the 4 months of training. And you can tell in the final product because there isn't very much kicking from Neo, even if it's what we all wanted to see and what Reeves wanted to do.
Kicking? Oh, I want to do some kicking!
Oh, and Weaving had to have hip surgery done after he gained an injury during the training process, which probably sounded like this. And on that note, we go to the filming. For the filming of The Matrix, all but a few scenes were filmed at Fox Studios Australia, which yes was also where the Star Wars prequel trilogy, namely episodes 2 and 3, were filmed in Sydney, as well as within the actual city, although any recognizable landmarks were excluded from the shots so that it would look like just another atypical city found in the US, meaning they could have called it New Rains, Washington, or Pooptown, West Virginia, and no one would have realized that it was Sydney. Excuse me. The filming helped to make New South Wales a premier film production centre, for which filming began in March 1998 and concluded in August 1998, with principal photography totaling about 118 days, with some filming occurring at Culver Studios, a place that served to house many productions over the years, including A Star Is Born, the 1937 version, Gone with the Wind, Rebecca, Since You Went Away, Spellbound, Duel in the Sun, Carrie, Rocky, The Jerk, Raging Bull, Airplane, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, The Man with Two Brains, Prizzi's Honor, Three Amigos, RoboCop, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Beetlejuice, Bugsy, Hook, A Few Good Men, Crimson Tide, Nixon, Air Force One, Contact, Wag the Dog, Armageddon, Legally Blonde, Kill Bill Volume 1, 50 First Dates, Peter Pan, the 2003 version, Night at the Museum, I Am Legend, State of Play, X-Men First Class, and even TV productions like Hogan's Heroes, the 1960s Batman show, and even Pee-wee's Playhouse. Because of Keanu Reeves' aforementioned neck problem, some of the action scenes were rescheduled to a later date so that he could fully recover from his injury. In fact, filming even began with scenes that didn't require too much physical exertion, such as with the scene in Thomas Anderson's office, the interrogation room, and the car ride for which Neo is taken to the Oracle. Filming for these scenes took place at locations like Martin Place's Fountain in Sydney. Martin Place was also where Superman Returns and most recently The Fall Guy were filmed, halfway between it and the adjacent Colonial Building and the Colonial Building itself. Meanwhile, the scene on the rooftop of a government building actually had extra footage of Neo dodging bullets filmed by the team in case the bullet time process didn't work out, of which the bullet time sequence was filmed on the roof of Symantec, now Gen Digital Corporation building in Kent Street, which was opposite Sussex Street. Meanwhile, Carrie Ann Moss did all of her shots with Trinity in the beginning of the film and her wire stunts by herself, with the rooftop set where Trinity escapes from Agent Brown was actually some stuff left over from the production of Dark City, a film that has very similar themes to The Matrix, as they both involve the idea of who we are and what we deem as reality. And of course something I need to see in the future because it's from the director of The Crow, and both are very aesthetically pleasing. Anyway, during the lobby scene rehearsal, where Trinity does a wall run, Moss ended up with a leg injury, which rendered her unable to film the shot in one take, claiming she was under lots of pressure at that moment, and was devastated that she realized she was unable to do it. Here's what that sounded like.
I don't want this anymore! Ah! Ah!
Lawrence Fishburne said that while he was being filmed in Sydney, he had a racist vibe that to him felt like America in the 1950s. Which, given how the agents are kind of like the Gestapo, that's not surprising. Other things like the dojo set were put together long before the actual filming started, for which during the filming of these action scenes, there was a lot of significant physical contact between the actors, leaving them with plenty of bruises, even more so than a barroom brawl with Popeye the Sailor Man. Reeves' injury, coupled with his inexperience with wires due to a lack of training, meant he couldn't do the 3 kicks in a manner that was satisfying, and even became frustrated with himself, leading to delays of filming, eventually being shot a few days later and going by without a hitch, as good old Keanu managed to do it in only 3 takes. Yoon Woo Ping modified the choreography and had the actors pull their punches in the last part of the scene so that it would feel like training. The filmmakers initially wanted to have the subway scene shot in an actual subway station, but because of the complexity of the fight and the wire work that was needed, they ultimately had to film it on an actual set, with a lot of it being built around an existing train storage facility, as that had actual train tracks. When filming the scene for which Neo slams Smith into the ceiling, Chad Stahelski, Reeves' stunt double and future director of the John Wick films, sustained many injuries, including some broken ribs, knees, and a dislocated shoulder, while another stuntman got injured via hydraulic puller, which was for a shot in which Neo was slammed into a booth. Kind of like what happened to me at my cousin's bachelor party. His friend thought I was a cow. Meanwhile, the office building that Smith interrogates Morpheus in was a large set, and the outside was a large 3-story high cyclorama, which is a panoramic image on the inside of a cylindrical platform made to give viewers standing in the middle of the cylinder a 360-degree view, and also a building designed to show such a panoramic image, kind of like if I showed pictures of Ash Ketchum throughout the years, including when he was first portrayed on the big screen by Douglas Fairbanks in the 1925 Swashbuckler, when Gregory Peck portrayed him in the 1966 film, when Harrison Ford played him in the 1980s, when Jason David Frank portrayed him in the 1990s, and Adam Driver's current portrayal. Wait, did I take the blue pill again? Sorry, I tend to get caught up in my own dream world, often forgetting the reality I live in. Happens all the time, really. Getting back on topic, the helicopter was a full-scale, lightweight mock-up held by a wire rope operated by a tilting mechanism which was mounted to the studio roof beams, with said helicopter having an actual minigun side mounted to it, which was set up to cycle at half its regular 3,000 rounds per minute firing rate. To wrap this part up, the scene of Neo awakening from his pod was quite intriguing, as Reeves shaved his entire body with the intention being to give the character an emaciated look, which I'm guessing also include the hairs in his butt crack, and the scene where Neo falls into the sewer system pretty much finished the principal photography. And according to the art of the Matrix, at least one scene that was filmed and a random assortment of short pieces of action were removed from the finished film. And now, let's discuss the sound and music that the Matrix has going on. For the sound effects and music of the Matrix, Dane A. Davis, who would do the sound effects for the Wachowskis' other films and even supplied the voice for Morph and Treasure Planet, was in charge for creating sound effects for the movie, with the sound effects for the fight scenes like the whipping sounds of the punches being created using thin metal rods and recording them, editing the sounds later. In fact, almost 50 sounds were put together just to create the sound of the pod containing a human body closing. Meanwhile, with the music, Don Davis, who had worked on episodes of Tiny Toon Adventures and had previously collaborated with the Wachowskis on Bound, composed the film's score. In another universe, Michael Kamen would have provided the film score. Davis recognized that there were a lot of mirrors showing up in the film quite often, like with the reflection of the red and blue pills being seen in Morpheus's glasses, Trinity's motorcycle having a rear view mirror witnessing Neo's capture by the agents, Neo watching a broken mirror fix itself, the spoon bending has reflections warping, and as the helicopter approaches the skyscraper, the reflection of the helicopter is seen. So he chose to focus on this theme of reflections to help make the film score, going back and forth between sections of the orchestra and attempting to incorporate contrapuntal, which relates to a piece of music with two or more independent melodic lines, ideas. Davis's score pretty much is a combination of orchestral, choral, and synthesizer elements, the Jerry Goldsmith method, with the balance between these elements varying depending on whether humans or machines were the focus of a certain scene. On top of Davis's score, you also have stuff that can be found on the album The Matrix Music from the Motion Picture, including Rammstein, Rob Dugan, Rage Against the Machine, Propellerheads, Ministry, Lunatic Calm, Deftones, Monster Magnet, The Prodigy, Rob Zombie, Meat Beat Manifesto, and Marilyn Manson. Meaning you got something perfect for blasting in your car to the speed of sound. And now for the production design. For the production design, the film has a code which composes the Matrix itself, and is shown to be frequently flowing downward green characters, with the code utilizing a custom typeface designed by Simon Whiteley and includes mirror images of half-width kana characters, Western Latin letters, and Arabic numerals. In a 2017 interview at CNET, Whiteley attributed his wife, who is from Japan, to helping produce the design, adding, "I'd like to tell everybody that the Matrix's code is made out of Japanese sushi recipes." It's also been said that the color green is meant to reflect how early monochrome computer monitors usually had a green tint to them. Either that, or it's an homage to the old school Game Boy and its monochrome screen. Either way, there's a lot of green in this movie, even more so than my crab after eating a lot of broccoli. Lynn Cartwright, the visual effects supervisor at Animal Logic, the company that had involvement in films like Babe, Moulin Rouge, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, as well as Deathly Hallows Part 2, Happy Feet 300, 28 Weeks Later, Iron Man 3, The Great Gatsby, among many others, supervised the creation of the film's opening title sequence, and even created the overall look of the Matrix code throughout the film, which was done with Lindsay Flay and Justin Marshall. The opening credits, for those who probably spent their days in video stores searching for anime, is similar to those found in the seminal classic Ghost in the Shell. Excuse me. A big influence on The Matrix, and having seen Ghost in the Shell, yeah, I see the parallels. These would later be used in subsequent films, the official Matrix website, and in the video game The Matrix Path of Neo. And the drop-down effect is reflected in some of the poster designs for the Matrix franchise. The code would soon receive the runner-up award in the 1999 Jesse Garson Award for in-film typography or opening credit sequence. Meanwhile, production designer Owen Patterson, who had previously worked on The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and would later do V for Vendetta, Speed Racer, Godzilla 2014 and Godzilla vs. Kong, Captain America Civil War, and Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle, utilized many techniques to help distinguish the real world with that of the Matrix, with the production design team opting to have a certain color scheme, with the Matrix and all scenes in the simulation having a very green color scheme, and all scenes set outside of it have a blue color scheme. Other details include the Matrix scenes having some minimally decayed, monolithic and grid-like sets in order to drive home the cold, logical, artificial nature of said environment, and for their scenes set in what's supposed to be the real world, the actresses' hair was less styled, their clothing's content was more textile, and the cinematographers made use of longer lenses to soften the backgrounds and give more emphasis to the actors. For the Nebuchadnezzar, rather than have it be all clean and shiny like it was Star Trek or something, it was designed to look like someone had started a fight with Zangief and intended to rob the place during the ensuing chaos, with the wires being made visible to showcase the ship's working internals. And each composition was carefully created to portray the ship as being part man, part machine. The scene of Neo being freed from the pod that the Matrix is attached to had the pod being designed to look dirtier than my wildest fantasies, like someone used this as a bathroom, and as sinister as Mr. Sinister. While during the testing of a breathing device inside of it, the tester got hypothermia in under 8 minutes, and thus it was required that the pod be heated, meaning they could make tea afterwards if they wanted to. Costume designer Kim Barrett, whose credits include Romeo and Juliet, Three Kings, Speed Racer, The Amazing Spider-Man, American Made, Aquaman, Us, and Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, has claimed that she defined the characters and their environment based on what they wear, such as with Keanu Reeves' office costume, with it being designed to have Thomas Anderson look like he didn't belong there, that he was uncomfortable, and looking very disheveled. Barrett would sometimes use 3 different fabrics for each costume, and this was while considering the practicality of the acting, as the actors had to do martial art actions in said costumes. They needed to hang upside down without anyone seeing up their clothing, and they had to be appropriate for the wire work while strapped to the harnesses. With Trinity, Barrett experimented with how each fabric absorbed and reflected against various forms of light, and soon made Trinity's getup Mercury-like and oil slick to suit the character, while the agents were designed to have a Secret Service undercover look, kind of like Oliver Stone's JFK and classic Men in Black.
You know what the difference is between you and me? I make this look good.
Not those guys. They're out to protect the world with no one's knowledge. Those guys are just out to keep any and all UFO enthusiasts quiet about whatever they saw, and that's just because of all of the many conspiracy theories that have existed since UFO sightings began. Back when a man in ancient Rome saw something in the sky and was supposedly threatened by men wearing black robes to keep quiet or be executed for treason, even though it was false. And lastly, for the sunglasses, a very common staple of the film's aesthetics, they were commissioned by designer Richard Walker from sunglasses maker Blind Design. It was either that or get some onsies so that all the characters free of the Matrix's control look like they're either the Terminator or Bret Hart, and the agents would all have to reserve some cheap ones they found at a Circle K. We're almost there, folks. We just need to talk about the special effects, and we're home free. To start off on the special effects for the film, here is a quote from the man behind the bullet time effect, John Gaeta. As for artistic inspiration for bullet time, I would credit Otomo Katsuhiro, who co-wrote and directed Akira, which definitely blew me away, along with director Michel Gondry. His music videos experimented with a different type of technique called U-morphing, and it was just part of the beginning of uncovering the creative approaches toward using still cameras for special effects. Our technique was significantly different because we built it to move around objects that were themselves in motion, and we were also able to create slow motion events that virtual cameras could move around rather than the static action in Gondry's music videos with limited camera moves. With this in mind, the film is well known for popularizing the bullet time effect, which allows for a shot to progress in slow motion as the camera seems to move through the scene at normal speed, and it's described as a visual for the way the characters manipulate the Matrix, which throughout the film they exert via their control over time and space. The Wachowskis first envisioned an action sequence that slowed time down as the camera pivoted rapidly around the subjects and proposed this effect in their screenplay for the film, for which when Gaeta read the script, he pleaded with an effects producer at Mask.Illusion, whose work had previously consisted of Eraser and What Dreams May Come, to let him work on the production, helping to create a prototype that would soon give him the duty of visual effects supervisor. The method that was utilized for making these effects real involved a technically expanded version of an old art photography technique known as time-slice photography, which involves an array of cameras being placed around an object and triggered all at once, with each camera capturing a still picture, contributing one frame to the video sequence, creating the effect of virtual camera movement, which is described as the illusion of a viewpoint moving around an object that appears to be frozen in time. The bullet time effect is similar, but is a bit more complex, requiring temporal motion so that rather than appearing more frozen than a creamsicle in Antarctica, the scene progresses in slow and variable motion. The camera's positions and exposures were pre-visualized using a 3D simulation, and instead of firing the camera simultaneously, the visual effects team flipped them on fractions of a second apart from each other so that each camera could get all the action as it progressed, creating a super slow effect, for which when all frames were put together, the resulting slow motion effects managed to get to a frame frequency of 12,000 per second, something which was very different compared to the normal 24 frames per second in the film. Standard movie cameras were placed at the ends of the array to pick up the normal speed before and after the fact, and because a majority of the cameras circle the subject almost all the time in most of the sequences, computer technology was used to edit out the cameras that showed up in the background on the other side. Supposedly, Geta hired George Borshikov to create backgrounds, designing 3D models based on the geometry of buildings and used photos of those buildings as texture. Meanwhile, the photorealistic surroundings manufactured by this technique were incorporated into the bullet time effect, and algorithms based on optical flow, a pattern of apparent motion from object surfaces and edges caused by the relative motion between an observer and a scene, were put to use to interpolate between the still images to produce a smooth dynamic motion, with the computer-generated lead-in and lead-out slides being filled between frames in sequence to get the illusion of orbiting the scene. Masked-out illusion, also known as Mannix visual effects, utilized a cluster farm running the Unix-esque operating system FreeBSD to make sure the visual effects had good rendering done. Mannix was also responsible for the creature effects, namely the sentinels and machines during the scenes in the real world, with Animal Logic creating the code hallway and the exploding agent at the end of the film, while a company called D-Film did these scenes that needed lots of digital compositing, such as with Neo's jump from a skyscraper and the helicopter crash into a building. The ripple effect was, in that last scene, was done digitally, but also used some practical elements, and months of extensive research were used to get the proper kind of glass and explosives for usage in it, with all of it being shot through a colliding quarter-scale helicopter mock-up into a glass wall wired to concentric rings of explosives, which would then be triggered in sequence from the center outward to help put together a wave of exploding glass. To wrap all of this up, the photogrammetric and image-based CG background approaches in the film's bullet time would evolve tremendously into innovations seen in the sequels, The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions, and the method of having actual photos of buildings as texture for 3D models eventually led the VFX team to digitize all the data, including scenes, characters' motions, and expressions, as well as the creation of universal capture, which is a process that samples and stores facial details and expressions at high resolution. With all of this highly detailed collected data, the team was able to create virtual cinematography for which characters, locations, and events could all be made digitally and viewed through virtual cameras, negating the restrictions of real cameras and saving some money in the process. And now we come to the part we've all been waiting for. My thoughts on the film. So let's get down to it. The Matrix is the kind of movie you know about. It's one you've seen parodied many times, and you've seen the influence on many forms of media. And yet you've probably never seen it before. Even if you know the scenes and the elements that made it one of the most influential films ever made. At least that was for me for the longest amount of time. Now that I've seen it, I can safely say that this movie's 100% awesome, and easily one of the coolest films ever made. Especially since it came out in a year where there was an assortment of movies that were exciting to the max, and were most definitely worth watching back then. It still has a fun factor that to this day is worth revisiting, along with some other elements that really makes it more than just another action film in this line of 90s action films. For starters, the film has some great cinematography, as every shot is stylish and slick, frenetic and fast, and overall is a cornucopia of coolness that in the late 90s was truly astounding when you saw it. Although, as you can tell, there is a lot of green in this film, because in the late 90s and early 2000s, there was one color that was to these kinds of movies what a more bright color scheme was to a Tony Scott film. And this was all because of films like The Matrix that this was relatively popular. Trust me, whether you owned an original Xbox or saw the 2002 version of The Ring, it was the green age. And if it were any more green, it would have had characters eating mint chocolate chip ice cream. Even so, it is still very well shot. And it was done by Bill Pope, who's done films for Sam Raimi like Darkman, Army of Darkness, Spider-Man 2, and is currently doing his next film, Send Help. Edgar Wright with Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, The World's End, and Baby Driver. He had done Bound for the Wachowskis, and has done films like Fire in the Sky, Clueless, Gridlock, Team America, World Police, Men in Black 3, the 2016 remake of The Jungle Book, The Kid Who Would Be King, Alita Battle Angel, Shang-Chi, and The Legend of the Ten Rings, and even the most recent live-action adaptation of How to Train Your Dragon. So you can tell this was a master cinematographer. Then we also have the film's themes of philosophy, with one particular theme to me standing out, namely what we deem as reality and choice. The theme of choice is apparent really from the start, when Neo is given the choice of taking either the red pill or the blue pill, with one revealing reality and the other leaving him in his state of sedation. In theory, Neo could have taken the blue pill. He could have accepted the reality he lived in, would have been content with what he deemed was real, and would have been none the wiser than if he accepted the red pill. In theory, he could have accepted that this was his reality and that nothing was going to get any better than this, which is what the blue pill represents. The accepting of reality we live in and sticking to what we feel is the status quo. However, Neo accepts the red pill because, among just being curious, he's bored with his existence. He works a dead-end job, he does hacking as a means to break away from his reality, and even if he knew that it was all a simulation, an illusion sedating humanity and controlling the way they live, eat, and sleep, he still hates the life that he has been living and wants more out of it than what he's been given. As a result, Neo takes the red pill not just because he believes what Morpheus says, but because it's a way for him to escape his mundane, dull existence that the Matrix has supplied him, and in turn gives him a purpose and meaning to what his life is about. Even after escaping, he still isn't sure if he's the one, with even the Oracle showing doubt in his abilities and potential as the one to free humanity from its machine overlords, as when he starts his training to fight back, he fails his first attempt to break the laws of physics when he tries to jump, only to spring up like jello upon falling to the ground. Then he starts to believe, and that's when he becomes the One. From holding the helicopter's harness to save Trinity, allowing him to have Hulk-level strength, casually blocking all of Smith's attacks, and causing him to explode into pieces upon entering his body. That's when Neo becomes the one. And by the end of it, it renders him to be able to fly like Superman, helping him to not only believe he's the hero to save the human race, but also to believe in himself, realizing his true potential and allowing him to become one with both realities. Compared to Cypher, who despite taking the red pill, believes the Matrix is more real than the real world, and actually betrays the crew of the Nebuchadnezzar to return to the lie he wishes to believe, Neo also is shown to have more faith in Morpheus and to the cause that those who fight the Matrix are for, versus what Cypher believes. But enough about philosophy. Let's talk about the action because, as you can tell, these scenes are the things I love a lot. And if I make a movie, I want to shoot scenes like this. The moment the film starts, it pretty much tells you everything you are about to see. Because there are a lot of what we people call and while this could be seen as cheap and dumb, here it's actually dazzling and spectacular. With every shootout looking exceptional, all hand-to-hand combat sequences being well choreographed and brilliant, and all feeling, looking, and shouting awesomeness. Especially the helicopter scene. Just Neo firing that minigun, the rounds flying out in slow motion, and the glass breaking. Such a great scene. Great scene. And all of it comes together with amazing visual effects, with CGI that still looks rad even now, and even some practical effects in some cases, proving that when you have both elements, you have phenomenal visual effects. I mean, just seeing that bullet time, Neo dodging the Aegis' bullets, that is the epitome of badass. And really, who didn't want to do this back then? All while wearing a sweet trench coat and shades. Now we come to the acting. And I'm going to say this about the acting. If you're expecting something like this to happen, I'm sorry to say, there's not a whole lot of that. You have to wait for revolutions to get something over the top. Rather, the acting is more quiet, subtle, muted, almost whisper-like in nature. So there's not too much yelling or screaming. But even so, there is charm and charisma with all of the characters, starting with my boy Keanu as Thomas Anderson, or as we know him, Neo. Reeves is pretty sweet as Neo, starting out as a random nobody in the Matrix that only has notoriety in the hacking circles before eventually discovering the Matrix and becoming the beacon of freedom that he has been prophesized as, becoming in some ways a superhero. Trust me, NetherRealm tried to get him in Injustice 2. Reeves adds his ever so cool aura into the character and ensures that you like Neo when his arc begins, and you love him at the end when he is the one. Moving from him, you have Carrie Ann Moss as Trinity, who from the start shows how awesome she can be within the first 10 minutes. Moss also adds charisma into Trinity, and she looks good fighting. Trust me, she even knows Jeet Kune Do. And proves to be a force to be reckoned with long before even Neo comes into the story. She also is kinda sexy, almost in a Major Motoko sort of way. And this is coming from someone whose preference in women is this.
Want to take measurements?
Would you do this for me?
Oh God, yes!
Then we got Lawrence Fishburne as Morpheus, the one who trains Neo and helps free him from the control of the Matrix, and proves to be an influential and father-like figure to a lot of the crew on the Nebuchadnezzar, as well as a brave leader who shows courage even in the face of doom. I love Lawrence Fishburne. From Deep Cover, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, Pee-wee's Playhouse, his appearance in the John Wick films, Apocalypse Now, Searching for Bobby Fischer, and Mission Impossible 3, he's a great actor, and he easily shines here as Morpheus. He's cool, charming, commanding, and all around awesome as the leader of the Nebuchadnezzar, showcasing a lot of belief in Neo and a sense of spirituality that only an actor like Fishburne could exude with such finesse. Except maybe Sean Connery, but I'm reviewing The Matrix, not Highlander. Anyway, we now come to Hugo Weaving as Agent Smith, the cold, heartless head agent in The Matrix. One who seeks to keep everyone under its influence and kill those who choose to fight back. Weaving certainly has a knack for playing characters that can be recognized easily. From Elrond in the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit trilogies, to Red Skull in Captain America, the First Avenger, to Megatron in the first 3 Transformers films, he does a lot of these. And in The Matrix, he plays the most recognizable character yet with Agent Smith. He's chilling and menacing, creepy and unfeeling, a robot in a sea of ones and zeros, and Weaving is so good at playing this kind of character that it makes you wonder, who could have played a character this good on film? He nails it, and easily makes Smith one of the best movie villains ever put to screen. Other good performances include Gloria Foster as the Oracle, a prophet in The Matrix who gives wisdom and foresight to those rebelling against it, and in turn reinforcing the film's themes of what we deem real with the spoon. Joe Pantoliano as Cypher, someone who Morpheus freed but regrets it and ends up betraying the crew of the Nebuchadnezzar so that he may live in the Matrix with no knowledge of the real world, also showing how even showing the reality can leave you in denial, and once again showing his knack for playing memorable characters. And Marcus Chong as Tank, the operator of the Nebuchadnezzar and brother of Dozer, the pilot of said ship. And a character who sadly would not make it into the sequels due to conflicts with the Wachowskis and Warner Brothers, leading to the replacement of his character with that of Harold Perrineau's Link. Be sure to look out for Robert Taylor as Agent Smith, as he would later play Walt Longmire on Longmire, Matt Doran as Mouse, he would later play Ilan Sleazebagano in Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones, and Anthony Ray Parker as Dozer, who would actually do some voices for Power Rangers Dino Thunder and Megaforce. And because you already know I'll praise the pacing for moving fast, helping to make a worthwhile 2 hours, I'll skip right ahead to my final point. The music for the film rocks. From Don Davis' score to Rage Against the Machine's Wake Up, everything about this soundtrack is a blast of tunes that will knock you out before waking you back up to hear more of it. Davis' score has that excellent blend of orchestral, choral, and synthesized sound that in a cyberpunk fantasy like this, it is very fitting, helping to enhance the action along with the more quieter scenes, and is also a showcase for really how Davis has come from just doing music for Tiny Toon Adventures. It's one of those film scores that is as awesome as it sounds, and the moment you hear it in action, it is magnetic, and kind of makes Davis the Michael Kamen of film scores, in that these guys are some of the best, but you probably never even heard of them. Also, any soundtrack that has Rob Zombie's Dracula is already 10 times more awesome. Plus, some of this stuff sounds great at a rave, where I inevitably get rejected by some lady because she thinks I'm Lord Hater from Wander Over Yonder, and obviously, she's more into him. But yeah, the soundtrack's slapping, and when you factor in a lot of things, including the production design and costume design, you have the recipe for excellency here. Overall, The Matrix is awesome, and I guarantee you'll find it awesome too. The Matrix was a smash hit, as it's pretty clear by the amount of box office records it broke that we can't even name them all here. But just to let you know, this made $27.8 million in its opening weekend and earned a total of $37.4 million in its first 5 days. It was the highest grossing R-rated film of the year and the 4th highest grossing film of the year, just behind Toy Story 2, The Sixth Sense, and Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, as during its original run in theaters, it made $171,479,390 in the US and Canada, and $292,037,453 in other countries, gaining an overall gross of $463,517,383. It was also a hit with critics, as well as with many science fiction filmmakers and creators. With Darren Aronofsky once stating, "I walked out of The Matrix and I was thinking, what kind of science fiction movie can people make now?" The Wachowskis basically took all the great sci-fi ideas of the 20th century and rolled them into a delicious pop culture sandwich that everyone devoured. M. Night Shyamalan also expressed admiration for the Wachowskis, commenting, "Whatever you think of The Matrix, every shot is there because of the passion they have. You can see they argued it out." Simon Pegg has said on the film, "The Matrix seemed fresh and cool and visually breathtaking, making wonderful, intelligent use of CGI to augment the on-screen action, striking a perfect balance of the real and hyperreal. It was possibly the coolest film I had ever seen." Quentin Tarantino counted The Matrix as one of his 20 favorite films from 1992 to 2009. James Cameron called it a profoundly fresh science fiction film. And Christopher Nolan has said that it was tangible mainstream sensation that made people question reality. The film won 4 Academy Awards for Best Film Editing, Best Sound Editing, Best Visual Effects, and Best Sound. The bullet time effect would go on to be a popular mechanic in many video games, such as Max Payne, for example, which started the trend of bullet time in video games, which had been developed long before The Matrix came out, and would be parodied by many forms of media, including in Conker's Bad Fur Day, a game with an assortment of parodies and a literal singing pile of doo-doo.
In the bathroom.
It spawned many clone films, made a splash in terms of the wire-fu techniques, just see X-Men and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon for example, gained one of the most fan-devoted followings since Star Wars. The success of the Matrix trilogy, the Star Wars prequel trilogy, and the Lord of the Rings trilogy made Hollywood interested in trilogies, and has even been said to be a key player in influencing superhero films. It's been placed on many best-of lists, and in 2012, The Matrix was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress, meaning it's that influential. It also spawned comic books and video games, and of course, sequels, with these including 2003's The Matrix Reloaded, and The Matrix Revolutions, The Animatrix, and The Matrix Resurrections. And I know I will at least be covering 2 of those, because I don't want to drive myself too insane. But yeah, it was a hit. A gigantic hit. The Matrix is awesome. And I definitely recommend that you check it out. This gets my highest seal of approval and a big thumbs up from me. Whether you decide to pick it up on DVD, preferably as a part of this lovely little box set here, or you decide to pick it up on Blu-ray, it's a film that is definitely worth watching after all this time, and really still holds up in the grand scheme of things. The action is awesome, the acting is great, the soundtrack is awesome, the visual effects are still amazing even now, and there's a lot of deep philosophical themes that really makes you think. You can really see why this was one of the most influential science fiction films, science and action movies, and really just one of the most influential movies of the 1990s, because there's a lot going for it beyond just simply the cool visuals and action scenes. It really is worth watching. I definitely go check it out. And so with that, this concludes my review for The Matrix. I hope you enjoyed it, found it entertaining, educational, and it made you want to seek out this movie. But while this review may be over, we've only just jacked into this whole event. So, tune in next time for when we cover The Matrix Reloaded. Gotta put that back in there. But until then, I will catch you later. I'll see you next time.